Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Guerrilla Poker. Today I'm going to be reviewing a high-stakes hand history played at 100, 200 by two very good players. So, let's get into the footage. Okay, so Roman raises the button to 500, 2.5x, relatively good sizing. Jorma 3-bets from the small blind, they're roughly 100 deep. He 3-bets to 2200. In this spot, you want to be 3-betting somewhere between 4 and 5x, so this is right in the middle. And Roman decides to 4-bet to 5000, which, if you'll note, is roughly 2.25x the 3-bet size. So all these sizings are definitely in the technically accurate range of what you can do. If you start 4-betting too big or too small, you give your opponent kind of too easy decisions. You don't want to give your opponent easy pre-flop decisions. So if, for example, you were to min 4-bet, your opponent could never fold anything. If you were to 4-bet really big, he might be able to play 5-bet or fold and not really have a flatting range. And this size is right there in the middle, giving him some tough decisions and putting some of his hands in different type of spots. So we get a Queen 7-8 rainbow board. Always important to think of the interaction with the ranges. In this instance, the star of the 4-bet range is going to be Ace-King, and the star of the small blinds range, the flatting range, is actually going to be Ace-Queen, because Ace-Queen and Ace-Queen suited both always 3-bet and will always flat a 4-bet of this size. So in this instance, the Queen-High board is actually deceptively good for the caller. And that's important to keep in mind, with Ace-Queen being a kind of threshold hand where anything that beats Ace-Queen is happily getting stacks in, and anything that loses to Ace-Queen may be playing it a bit more cautiously. Okay, so we have a check. Roman bets quarter pot, and I often say this indicates a range bet, and maybe it does, but this is definitely not the board for it due to the Ace-Queen, Ace-King effect that I mentioned, where out of position makes a ton of top pair, top kicker, and in position's main offsuit hand actually misses. Be that as it may, we have a bet and a call. Turn deuce of hearts, complete brick, goes check and check. And at this point, you want to think about both ranges. So Jorma from out of position could obviously have somewhere in the vicinity of 9s, 10s, jacks that he didn't 4-bet, pocket 7s, pocket 8s, various queens, various 7s, various 8s, and all of the straight draws, right? So Jack 10 suited, Jack 9 suited, 10 9 suited, 6 5 suited. Somewhere in that areas is what I would estimate his range. Roman to go bet and check. So again, Jacks 10s 9s, 7x, 8x makes sense. Maybe some of his weaker queens, and maybe some traps, but to think about should he or shouldn't he have traps, you always want to be thinking a bit about, traps are there to defend a portion of your range. Traps are not there just because you always want traps. The idea behind traps is that if you don't have any traps, your opponent can value bet extremely, extremely thin and extremely big. And once he starts doing that, you get an incentive to start trapping. This is usually the kind of trap dynamic, or something that just blocks the board here, like if you have pocket queens. So in this instance, with a SPR being very low in a 4-bet pot, you can't really stop your opponent from stacking off with a queen. He can definitely shove any queen on the river. And there's not like a huge hand class that you really need to carry to showdown against thin value bets. Usually the hand class in 4-bet pots would be Ace-King. But Ace-King is just not very strong on this board with a queen on the flop. And also, like we said, you can't really trap enough to stop your opponent from value betting a queen. He doesn't really have many hands weaker than a queen to value bet, and you can actually stop those by checking checks 10s, 9s, which are natural checks anyway. So you're in this kind of situation where other than pocket queens, trapping doesn't really make sense. So you shouldn't really have many traps. Okay, and we're keeping that in mind as the out of position player. So we get the 10 river, 10 kind of connecting with all the draws, right? So 9-10 makes a pair, Jack 10 makes a pair, 6-5 suited, which is really infrequent, doesn't make anything. And out of position's only air at this point would be if he floated something like King Jack suited, Ace Jack suited with a backdoor. Other than that, he's just going to have a pair. ace-king is going to have close to 0 showdown value. So here, Jorma checks, Roman tanks and goes all in for almost pot, gets called, and we see the cards. Jorma has Jack-10 of hearts, so pre-flop makes sense, flop makes sense, turn check check. River, you have to ask yourself, can he bet the 10? And this is where I was saying the thing about traps, right? Where if Roman is checking back kind of appropriately, then Jorma should be in kind of a tough spot with betting the 10, where maybe he can bet really small, but he certainly can't bet all in because Roman will have some pocket jacks, some pocket 10s, of course some ace-10 random stuff, probably some of his weaker queens as well. So you can't bet the 10 very big, and this is the effect of the trapping, but not trapping very good hands in this instance. And Roman shows up with pocket kings, so it is indeed a trap. It's the wrong kind of trap. I think he's misunderstanding something about what traps are made of in this instance, and this is something you very often see players of all stakes do. You know, he realizes that as the in-position player, he should be checking some strong hands, and he just uses a randomizer. When you don't kind of deeply understand the theory, you end up relying on randomizers and kind of throwing in the wrong hands in the wrong spots where, you know, this is not really much of a trapping spot, but change the board to be like, you know, something where ace-king has tons of showdown value, and where you are value betting your overpairs and suddenly checking back kings makes a ton of sense. So it's a lot about having the queen on the board in this instance. Hopefully that makes sense for you guys and you learn a little bit about traps. Traps are always a lot more of a thing as you get deeper because you're limiting your opponent's bet size. You know, you have to think when you're trapping, which hand type are you trying to limit your opponent from betting? Because if it's like, I don't want him to be able to value bet overpairs, sometimes that's not even feasible. But if you don't want him to be able to go all in with middle pairs, that makes sense. Or if you don't want him to go 5x pot with top pair, top kicker, that makes sense. And then you would need to trap some hands that beat that hand category. So a bit abstract. Hopefully it makes sense. Trapping definitely a part of poker, but you have to know which hand, which situation to make the most of it. Okay guys, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.